What's up, YouTube land? We are here live, 12 Volt Talk, Wednesday night, a normal hour. Got some special guests we're going to go through real quick and let everybody do a mic check. First up, Mr. Robert Vega, give us a check.
Yo, 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 what's up, guys?
You guys in the chat room, let us know if our levels sound okay. If they don't, then you're going to kind of have to deal with it because we don't have a lot of adjustment through Hangouts. Ben, give us a check real quick.
Hey, what's up, guys? Ben here from Illinois.
Ben in the house. Thank you, Ben. Cliff, give us a quick test.
Welcome. I'm not used to being dressed for this.
Oh, come on, Cliff.
You are dressed to impress for sure. Well, cool. Everybody in the chat room, can somebody give us an indication that we sound okay? Because I think we do. I think we sound fine.
Great.
Sounds good, says Focus Dark Audio. And Focus Dark Audio is what he says goes. So we're going to let it go.
Cool.
All right. I'm going to share who's going to do the intro.
Ben.
Come on, Cliff, it's your cue.
Welcome to the SQology podcast. This is Clifton, and I'm here with Ben and 12 Volt Vega and Big DeWiz.
What's going on, guys?
Wait a minute.
Was that pretty bad?
Who are these people that are interjected in our podcast? What's going on, guys? So this is Derek from Wilson Audio Labs, here as always with my co-host, Mr. Robert Vega. What's going on, Mr. High Five Vega?
Yo, what's going on? We are joined tonight by the SQology guys, the men, the myths, the legends.
Cliff.
Legendary. It's High Five Vega. See, if this was my podcast, I would have been able to edit that out and ignore the fact that I called you 12 Volt Vega and then just put High Five Vega and be like, edited perfectly and nobody would ever know. But here we are live.
But he's going to buy that domain just like you're going to buy the one we talked about before we went live.
Right.
That I'm not going to mention again because I don't want anybody else to buy it.
Right. Because it'll be like $2,200 by tomorrow if we do that.
That's SPLology.com?
Yeah, right. Sapology.com.
All right. Demos are free around here. So, thanks, guys, for joining us. And we have left a link in the video description below to SQology, so you guys can check out their Facebook page and also their SoundCloud page and subscribe to their podcast. So when you're done listening to us, you can listen to them or vice versa. However you do it, just listen to both of us. So check them out. They've got a lot of episodes. They've interviewed some really cool people and lots of good stuff there. So make sure you check them out. But let's do a little introduction here. So Ben, you go first. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your car audio dreams and wishes and all that good stuff.
I got suckered into this thing, to be completely honest with you. I don't know. I've enjoyed cars and audio and music my whole life. I have been a musician since I was 5 years old. I started playing the violin. Don't tell anybody. And then I picked up some wind instruments and other instruments throughout school, and as a result of that, music has always been important to me, and making music sound accurate and real has been important to me. So got my first car when I was 16. It was a stick. My mom had to drive it home, but I had some friends that were into the car audio stuff and kind of influenced me to do some stuff. And I don't know. I kind of started small. It was a 85 Honda Civic 1500S. It's kind of a hatchback with the flat back. It was a carbureted thing back in 85. And let's see. I went to my local car audio shop and got a demo from the guy who owned the store, which was a fantastic demo. He actually had, back in the day, what I would say an SQ setup for back then in a van with all the speakers up front. He had mid-ranges and tweeters on the dash and mid-basses in the doors. This had to have been 1994 or so. So this was pre-digital processing or any of that. So it was pretty primitive with analog everything. But he expressed the importance of putting all the good stuff up front and getting the music to sound right up front and kind of ignoring what was going on behind you. And he did have subs in the back of the van, but they obviously weren't drawing attention to themselves. They blended in with the music up front, and everything just came alive out in front of me. So it kind of hooked me onto trying to recreate that experience in my car. So at the time, of course, I was 16 and had no money, but he had just given me this great demo, and I had to buy something. So I bought some Alpine, maybe, tweeters, I think, and put them up on the dash in the corners of my 85 Honda Civic. And they also had some Rockford Fosgate 4-inch mid-ranges that were like in a bargain bin that I picked up. So I put those, of course, down in the door factory locations. And then I can't remember if it was eBay at the time that was, new on the internet. And I found some, no, it was a pawn shop. I remember now. I went to a pawn shop and was digging through stuff, and I found some Pioneer tube subs. They had to have been like 6.5-inch subs in tubes. So I put those in the hatch, of course. And I'm pretty sure I ran the front stage off of a Jensen CD player that I bought at Walmart. Cliff, you should shake your head and disapprove right now.
It's okay. My first tweeters were Jensen.
So, yeah, I built a pretty craptastic stereo for little or no money, but I was pretty happy with it. I ended up ultimately buying a 4-channel Rockford Fosgate, not the punch, but it was like the step below the punch. It's kind of a silver amp with some red anodized aluminum pieces on it. Don't remember the model or anything, but it was a 4-channel, and I somehow rigged up the front 4s and tweeters with no mid basses, and the tube subs, again air quotes subs, in the back, and kind of built something that presented a reasonable tonality. Of course, no proper imaging or anything like that, but I was happy with that for a long time. So built on that, had several cars after that, and always did something. And now I have a 7-year-old looking over my shoulder.
She's making sure you're doing it right.
Yeah,
That's right. She says, no, they weren't tube subs. They were square subs. Get it right.
Right. Anyway, I had several cars after that, and always did something in the cars until I was old enough to have some money to do something, that I was a lot happier with. Around the same time, I was joining BMW forums, and there was a car audio specific forum on there, and I met some people who guided me in the direction of the SQ world as it pertained to actual, systems, and was introduced to DSP amplifiers around 2007 or so. So about 10 years after, my initial crappy systems, and started putting together some systems in a couple. I had 3 BMWs back to back to back, and kind of went through 3 iterations of systems in those different vehicles. By the time I was into my 3rd one, somebody introduced me to Hybrid Audio, which was a speaker company that was birthed by Scott Buwalda, and there's some history there that if you want to Google, I'm sure you can find all kinds of information on. But I ended up buying some really nice speakers and doing a install that was worthy of the caliber of speakers that I was using, and have kind of just grown from there. As part of that BMW Car Audio Forum, 12 Volt Electronics was a sponsor, who is Tom Myers, and he happens to live in Chicago, which I'm in Bloomington, Illinois, which is 2.5 hours or so south of Chicago. And Tom and I kind of just hit it off as far as, what we were doing with our cars and trying to build good sounding systems, and we kind of bad influences on each other. He got into doing some crazy stuff, and kind of, persuaded me to do some crazier stuff, and ultimately encouraged me to go to a IASCA judges training event in Peoria, Illinois. This was maybe 4 years ago or so. So I went to this judges training mostly just to learn, okay, what are these judges looking for in car audio? And turned out what they were looking for was a lot of what I was already doing. And I kind of got sucked into the competition scene that way. So my 7-year-old's back.
So you're saying that you skipped out on the piezo tweeters?
I
Yes.
did. I never did the whole
Wow,
SQology.
you never got to experience that ear-piercing beautifulness.
Let me go back to my second or third car where, of course, I was like 17 or 18 by this time, and it was all about the bass. And I wouldn't say by any means I was a bass head or an SPL competitor or anything like that, but I did like the bass. And I had some big old subs in my trunk and not a whole lot else. So I've kind of done the whole we're getting wild and crazy with subs thing, but I've just kind of grown from there into more enjoyable systems.
I'm glad to hear some people have grown up, Rob, because I haven't and Rob hasn't. But
Well, his system was light years ahead of mine. I had the Crunch 10s with the piezo tweeters hooked up off the Chevy Celebrity station wagon back speakers from the factory system. That was high quality back then. Rear image.
yeah, that's a good little introduction there, Ben. Thanks for that. Cliff, would you like to give us a little bit of your background in car audio, how you got started, your first system, all that good stuff?
Sure. So similar to Ben, around 19 something, around when I was 6, I started playing piano, and that's where. Am I coming up on the video screen, or is it still stuck on you?
It's blank for us, but I can just share an image or something until it comes back.
Yeah, it's stuck on you. Sorry. I don't know what's.
There
How
it
about
goes.
now?
Yeah, we got you now.
Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, I started playing piano when I was around 6. That's what kind of got me into music in the first place. But audio had always been there. My dad did a lot of church sound reinforcement systems and had a home studio. So I grew up in that environment, listening to music, listening to it loud, listening to it right, and then really constantly critiquing it. Around the late 80s, early 90s, my dad was working at a car audio shop doing the deck and four style installations, not a lot of fab work or anything, but that's during the summers, I would hang out there, basically just hanging out on the floor, reading through all the product manuals and the price list catalogs and everything else. So I had every, dealer cost and MSRP memorized for pretty much all the products. So with that, we had a lot of stuff kind of sitting around. So my first car audio system that I kind of took ownership of myself of doing was my mom's 88 Volkswagen Fox, somewhere in the early 90s or so. And at first, I think it was a Concord HPL 130 tape deck with the DBX box and Blaupunkt honeycomb 4-inch drivers on the dash, and then AudioVox Silver Series 6x9s on the rear deck, and a KLH home audio bandpass subwoofer. So that was, the first kind of system that I did. The next, the real system that was kind of the important one for me was in my 2000 Volkswagen Beetle. That was really the first system that kind of I competed with or anything. I happened to be looking for the Focal disc because a lot of people, like in the different groups and chats and everything that were going around, were looking for. I was looking for the Focal disc, so I searched on Google for that, and first thing that popped up was Mecca, and so then I was looking for the address or email or phone number or something to contact them, and looked at the address, and it happened to be around 2 miles away from where I was living at the time, which is where Steve Stern was. So I just emailed him and went to his house and got the CD, and then we started talking and kind of showed him what I was planning for the system and everything, and he kind of told me what they were going to go through as far as evaluating the system and everything. So this was around late 99, early 2000, somewhere in there. So got the car done around 3 in the morning, as you do. Went to first fire it up, and I was using the original Diamond Hex components in the front with Zapco Studio amps and a PPI DEQ230 and I think a Sony C90 head unit. And so first fired it up. I was using some of the terrible Streetwires ZN 5.0s at the time that none of them worked, so I had to replace virtually every RCA in the car. And then now it's around 5 a.m. and go to fire it up, and one of the mid-range drivers was completely seized up. So I go pilfering through my garage, and I find one of the old Rockford Punch audiophile 6.5s I had sitting from one of my old trucks. So of course that was the Diamond Hex were like 7-inch, whereas the Punch were 6.5-inch. So it was basically held in by 2 screws, barely hanging on for dear life. And of course, the PPI DEQ230 was a stereo EQ, not mono, so I couldn't really adjust for the difference between the sides. So I'm driving to Hi-Fi Buys in Nashville with the faceplate of the DEQ230 on my lap, all safety precautions in place, tuning the vehicle while I'm driving to the show, and get to the show barely in time. And I didn't know at all what I was doing, but that event was pretty good. It was August 18 or 20, I think, year 2000, and that show got first place. One of the co-founders of Mecca, Brad Eubanks, was the one who judged my car, and he got out and expletive deleted, but he really liked it, and he said, "You need to be a judge." So same day, I think also on Car Stereo Review, one of them was there, and they did a recap of the show and put all the winners in the listing and everything. So got my first magazine, and also we didn't really meet, but saw my now wife of 15 years going on. So pretty much that one show was pretty influential for everything, and it wouldn't have happened without that build. So that build was really the critical one, and I've not really topped it since, to be honest.
And again, you had 2 different 6.5. You had a 7-inch driver and one
Right.
door, and a 6.5-inch, 2 different brands.
Yes, yeah, 2 different sizes, 2 different everything. Actually, they were on the dash in a kind of a semi-custom enclosure, and I had a pair of IDQ 12s in the back in a sealed box. So yeah, that it was. It always seems like the cars that I've kind of thrown together have ended up being either the most influential or my favorite. The cars that years of planning and tens of thousands of dollars, and it's always a disappointment, but that's how it goes.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I can compete with the most expensive speakers out there, and I guarantee I'm gonna do poorly. So, it's about what you know. You can't fix a bad golf swing with good golf clubs.
Well, and you have to remember, you're sitting in the room here with the world champion SPL person here with Blau Pump $20 subs. Yeah, it's because I was the only one in the class, but we don't talk about that, even though I was the only one that entered that particular class. But anyway,
details.
Yeah, details. Yeah, I didn't charge for demos, so it's all good.
I hear you.
All right, so who do you guys consider your biggest influences getting into car audio or continuing furthering your career in car audio?
Ben?
Oh my God.
You can say Hi-Fi Vega. It's okay.
12-volt Vega?
Yeah. So from afar, I kind of, as I mentioned in my quick intro that wasn't so quick, was steered towards Scott Buwalda and kind of did some research and looked up his background and kind of was enamored by the things that he had done. but I didn't really have a close relationship with him per se. So I was influenced from afar by him. I would say a closer influence would definitely be Tom Myers, just because we kind of, man, we were big trolls on the car audio forum at the
Were. What are you talking about?
Okay, we're still big trolls in the car audio world, but yeah, I don't know. He was closer, and he kind of steered me in the direction that I've kind of gone, I would say.
That's cool. Cliff, what about you?
All right. And again, I apologize, whatever's going on with my video feed. Not that anybody wants to see me anyway, so it's okay. Influences for me, again, were, I think a lot of it was developed around that time. After I did that first competition and started judging, one of the things that was lacking at the time was, the people who were involved understood it, but coming in as an outsider from somebody who had not regularly competed before, because I'd come from the West Coast, and where I was on the West Coast, there was no competition going on. So once I moved into Nashville, then it was like competition every weekend. Okay, this is cool. But the issue was at the time, Mecca had their classes were basically divided between consumer and pro, and then the segregation between the classes was bronze, silver, gold. But nobody understood. There was no definition of what that meant. There was a score sheet, but there was no rule book. There was no definitions for anything. So that's really when I kind of got with Steve, being that we were so close in proximity, and back then there wasn't Google Hangouts where we could just be able to have a face-to-face conversation. So being able to go to his house any night of the week and sit down and be able to go through ideas was pretty fun. So at the time, I kind of reached out to the people who were most active at the top tier of competition at the time, who had kind of done it all. I had an advantage of not doing a lot of it, being that I was kind of going in with a clean slate. I didn't have any preconceived ideas of what it should be or what it shouldn't be, or what rules there should be or shouldn't be. So, I went to a lot of the guys at the time. That's when I really got to know Scott Bawalda. I had reached out to him for ideas for rules. And he had a lot of influence. Mark Eldridge had a lot of influence. Chuck Music at the time was really active. He's still around, but back then he was a really active part of it. And I would say those three, Mark Eldridge, Scott, and Chuck, were three of the key ones that really influenced the way I thought about competition, especially. So basically, I'd would email them, get their ideas. They'd email back, and there was a lot of others. There was Joe Black and probably a dozen other people that I was emailing at the time. Those are the ones that really stand out. Sorry, everybody. But I would take all those ideas and just take the names off, put them in a big Word document, and then go over to Steve's, and we'd sit down and just go through them for the ideas themselves versus who said it and what influence they may have, or what their bias might be, or whatever. Just, are they good ideas or not? And so, we went through the list, and that's really how the things like Mecca's categorization in sound quality of being based on, instead of power classes or who you are, or whatever, being based on the complexity of the install. Because one of the biggest things that kind of came out of all those initial discussions was, throw out the whole consumer pro idea, because at the end of the day, anybody winning in any class can be classified as a pro in some way, shape, or form. They've either got hookups on the equipment, or they have a buddy that's helping them out, or something. They're not doing it on their own nearly all the time. I mean, I would say now there's a lot more of the DIYers that are at that top level, but again, at some point you can just consider them a pro, even if they're not doing it for their living. So a lot of those ideas came at that time. Also trying to define what tonality means. It's a tough thing for, okay, here's 15 points or 10 points or 20 points or 30 points to choose from. And, bass, mid-range, tweeter. Okay, make a point, put a number on that. And there wasn't really anything saying what that number should be. So we tried to add that in as well. From there, I mean, it's really been everybody in car audio, I think, has had an influence in some way or shape or form on what we make some pretty major decisions with the competitions, especially from, people who most people don't even know their name. I mean, it's not a matter of, being this giant titan of the industry or anything else. I mean, there's big names that have made some really bad decisions and done some bad things, and there's some no names that have done some amazing things. So for me, at the end of the day, everybody's really had big influence, but that's really good at that time, and those people is really what kind of molded my thought process going forward.
So you're saying people outside the network have influenced you too?
Oh no, they're all inside the network now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that was clear so everybody knew who's
No,
listening.
I mean,
We're-
if you're not inside the network, we're not going to listen to you.
Okay, well, we'll get to that more later. After we have the Brazilian discussion where our audio gets cut out, we'll try not to go that far because it will get cut out if we talk about Brazilian amps. So Ben, let's go back to you with this one. All of us who have done anything with a car audio wise have made what Rob and I call a big dummy or a noob mistake. Have you got one of these or that you're willing to talk about that you can tell us about, something that you did that you call a noob, like using 8-gauge wire for 1,000 watts? Or come on, I know you got something. Tell us about it.
My biggest noob mistake in general is not knowing the limits of my own ability when it comes to install. For the longest time, I just tried to do everything myself, and if you were the installer that I have now, who is Toby Broadfield, here in Bloomington, Illinois, Mobile Audio Plus, shout out. He's seen a lot of what I've done over the years, and he's had to fix a lot of what I've done over the years. So yeah, I've made a lot of mistakes as far as install goes. And I can't think of one thing specifically, but in general, hiring a professional installer to do actual install things has been a big improvement for everything I've done.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'll admit it firsthand. Anytime I try to do any installation in a car, what normally takes a professional who does it every day an hour will take me 10 hours. So
yeah,
I'm willing to pay for people to do work that know how to do what they're doing, because I don't have the 10 extra hours. So I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I've done everything from using subpar deadening product that just falls off, or not prepping correctly, or I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Routing RCAs so that you get all kinds of noise in the system. Like I've done all the bad things that everybody says not to do. I've been there and kind of done them all, and then finally figured out that, hey, if I pay a professional who happens to be a good friend now to do what I can't do, then things ultimately are better all around.
You're supposed to get your buddy to do it.
He is a buddy, but he happens to be a professional buddy.
I mean, the guy will do it for a 6-pack of beer.
Right. Yeah.
All right,
and then offering to help friends, not knowing my own limits enough to offer to make the same mistake on friends' vehicles. Like, a buddy will ask me to help him do stuff, and I've done it, and it's turned out just as bad as when it's in my own vehicle. So
yeah, that's a common problem for me. I have a abundance of confidence in areas that I should have no confidence in, but
exactly,
I think it's just part of being a guy.
Exactly. I found that my true talent in the car audio thing, it really comes down to being able to tune a system. I have.
Well, it is now. It didn't used to be.
Well, with experience, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know how to turn the volume knob, so
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Yeah. So finding a reference and knowing how to make a system meet that reference as far as sound goes, there's some talent and skill that comes with time, practice, trial and error. As Cliff mentioned, you don't always start great at that, but having a music background and knowing what real instruments sound like goes a long way in having a good reference.
I agree with that. So, Cliff, what is your biggest noob / big dummy mistake
Well,
that you're willing to admit
yeah,
to the network?
mine was definitely when I was probably 17 or so, and buddy of mine, Sean Blankenship, and I were putting an amp in my pickup, and I had the brilliant idea of running the power wire outside the vehicle to make sure that it was the amp was working right and everything before we went through all the hassle. So did that, and then decided to slam the hood shut, and then everything went bright red. So yeah, that was definitely the probably the biggest one. I really haven't. I mean, I made lots of stupid mistakes surrounding car audio, but as far as like install wise or anything else, I really haven't blown much up. So I've been lucky in that regard.
So
You
you're
guys
saying
are
the
gonna have
picture
to.
that's circling the web that shows the grounding going to the antenna cable, that's not you.
That one wasn't me.
Okay.
Not
Yeah.
this time. It was close, but not this time.
All right. Go ahead, Rob.
I mean, you guys are going to have to make some mistakes on here. We can't be the only dummies on this podcast. It's not a good look. But
I didn't say there haven't been mistakes.
yeah. So let's get into the meat of it. The SQology podcast. Why and how did it start?
Ben.
Okay, so Cliff is going to blame me now.
It's your fault.
So we started the SQology events, I guess you could say, first, and had some success in hosting events, largely in part to Cliff's efforts. I really don't do much. SQology event hosting and all that is like 99.98% Cliff, and having some success with those events, we started having people follow our Facebook page and that type of thing. It was like I finally had the idea of, all right, let's expand this a little bit. And I listen to podcasts, but I noticed that there really was a shortage of car audio specific podcasts, and decided, hey, let's put something out there. So Cliff and I got on. What are we using? Skype? Yeah, we got on that Skype. And got our microphones out and just started talking, and kind of like we're doing
because as you can tell, I'm completely incompetent in Google Hangouts. So
yeah, this whole video thing is freaking me out.
I am not used to wearing clothes doing these things. That's
I often say I'm better heard than seen.
Yeah, right. So I don't know. That's how it was birthed. Like it was just an idea. We were like, let's record something, put it out, and people seemed to like it, so we did more of it. And then I had a baby and stepped out completely, and Cliff has just been running with it from there.
Yeah, it was basically how everything starts. We were in a Facebook Messenger group, at 1 a.m. or whatever, and Ben was like, "We should do a podcast," and I ignored him. And then like 2 days later, he was like, "No, really, we should do a podcast." And I had actually started one 5 or 6 years ago, did a few episodes, and it didn't really go anywhere. It just wasn't the time. So I already kind of knew all the basics of what to do practically, to make it happen. So I was like, okay, let's do it. So like a few days later or so, we started recording, and it was terrible, but started throwing it out there, and then started getting some guests on, and it's been fun. It's obviously been one of those things that we do. It's a spare time thing, labor of love. It's not like you guys where you're on a schedule and professional about it or anything. It's more of, when the right thing goes along and it feels right and there's enough time to do it, then we do it.
You have to add in here that Cliff has a lot of industry contacts and has reached out to a lot of people who have been more than willing and eager to get on the quote radio or podcast. And it's really cool to see the industry support this. We've had some really big popular names come on the podcast and chat with us, and
I purposely started out not doing it, not starting out with the big names or leaning on them, because I've seen a couple others come and go. Once you get 3 or 4 of the big names on there, then where do you go from there? So we really, the first year, I'd say it was mostly focusing on people that kind of nobody knew and bringing their story to light.
Right.
And that was really the most fun for me. It still is. I mean, I think, Gary Biggs, honestly, not because of his name necessarily, but I mean, the guy had like 30 years of story pin up because, I mean, he had not, um, even though he had a lot of articles and everything over the years, they were almost all focused on the vehicle, not him. So, I mean, he obviously had a ton to say just because, he finally got to say it. Now, that was fun to watch.
Yeah, to me, the whole goal of it all is to get those stories that the magazines, they show pictures, they would write an article, but you're not getting, hey, this guy really wants to tell this story about going out to dinner one night with, somebody else. And they just give you this real deep, in-depth stuff. That's what's cool. I'm going to share those who are watching live here on YouTube. I'm going to show the SQology page on SoundCloud. And guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're on Google Play. Are you on Spotify? Where else can people find your podcast?
The Apple, they've got an iPhone, the native podcast player. Pretty much any.
Pretty much any of them. I don't think we're on. I haven't submitted to Spotify, but any podcast feed that uses an RSS reader. But yeah, Google Play and Apple Podcasts are probably the most popular ways that people reach out. Most people don't necessarily listen through SoundCloud. I'd say the majority of them just come through the RSS feed.
Right. And so I'm just kind of scrolling through here, and I'll just name a few of the guests. You already mentioned Gary Biggs, but you guys have interviewed Manville Smith, Mark Eldridge, David Navone. I mean, there's just a bunch here. Steve Head. And if you guys haven't checked them out yet, check it out because they've got quite an archive. You've done, I don't think it tells the episode numbers, but
how many put an episode number at the beginning of our podcast, and that's largely because Cliff will record like 8 at a time and then publish them slowly and in no specific order.
Well, and also there's been ones that have been like more relevant during a certain time, and I've taken them down. Or rearrange them, or I mean, I just didn't want to put numbers on it because that's not really how I work. So I think, I mean, I think we got 32 posted right now according to what is on SoundCloud there, and that's what's active. And I think right now we've got about 50 recorded. So it's just been a matter of
time.
Yeah, I mean, because I mean, I'm a perfectionist when it comes to that stuff as much as I'm capable to do technically at the time. So, I mean, I've definitely gotten better at it, more efficient. But, in the beginning, it was taking me 6-7 hours an episode of editing time. And, now you still got to listen through it. And each one's a couple hours, some of the longer ones. So, there's still 4 or 5 hours of editing minimum on each one, just to get it to where it's more relevant and listenable. As I don't want people getting completely bored. I mean, it's all pretty boring stuff, but it's at least trying to keep those relevant as possible.
It's not boring.
Oh yeah, it is.
And you can edit. We both know this. You can edit for 10 hours. You can edit for 12
hours. You're still not even close.
Still not be happy with it.
Right.
So if you guys had to give someone an elevator pitch on why they should listen to SQology, or why they should even just check it out, what would that pitch be?
Ben?
Oh, come on. You're the same.
I love the way Cliff passes the mic every time.
Listen, this is total sidebar here, but Ben's definitely the hi-fi Vega of this duo. I can tell. I can just tell by the way the flow's going.
Okay, so a pitch to listen to the SQology podcast. Well, it really comes down to the content of the guests. Cliff and I started doing it just chatting ourselves the first couple of episodes, but then
which was horrible.
Oh, come on!
Nobody wants to hear us.
Yeah, actually, those first few episodes were pretty bad.
They were bad.
Yeah.
They're not there anymore. At least most of them.
Really?
Oh, I took them down a long time ago. Yeah, nobody wants to hear that.
All right.
Because what happens is people feel like they have to start at the beginning. They start at the beginning. They're like, well, this is a bunch of crap. What are people talking about? Now, I mean, like Ben said, it really comes down to, if you want to hear it, you have to kind of care about sound quality and the people involved. I mean, that's step one. And if you do, then learning more about, you know, not just technical. I mean, I don't think we get into technical that much. A couple episodes we have, but I mean, it's really my major thing is I want to know their story, how they got into it, why they're still here, what they're doing now, where they're going with it. I mean, just getting that one-on-one verbal conversation about somebody's story is just fascinating to me. It's a good story is a good story. I mean, I think if somebody wants to jump in and go, okay, what's this about? Listen to Mark Eldridge's podcast, in my opinion. Not necessarily because of him or anything else, or I'm not putting him on a elevator or anything, but I will say, for one thing, I don't think that any guest doesn't reference him at some point. It seems like every single one brings him up. I mean, he's definitely been a big part of everybody's history in this industry. Whether they were competing against him or learning from him or anything. I mean, he's just always been there. So, I mean, I think a lot of it is him. I mean, like in Manville Smith's episode, being able to go back to, the very early days of JL and how it developed, and getting that behind the scenes story that doesn't always happen. And, same with Scott Bowalda's, kind of everybody knows where these people are now or were then. They don't necessarily know the whole transition. And I think that's what I'm really after. And what I hope comes across. But, it's one of those things, it's not for everybody. But we've had a really good following. I mean, I've been blown away by the numbers, being that it's an audio only podcast that we don't advertise. So
to tag onto that, to emphasize it being about the people's stories, we've tried to stay away from technical, like this isn't a how-to podcast. This isn't a how do I build a system? It's not how do I tune a system? It's not what speakers do I need, because the internet is full of that stuff. You can go to any car audio group and ask those questions and see people give all kinds of opinions, but it's all about what makes those things personal for the people and the experience they have along the way. So it's a unique perspective, I think, on a lot of the other side of what you see on the internet.
Yeah, and I think you're right on there. Like, if I had to say an elevator pitch for you guys, would be come for the interviews, stick around for the chemistry, because as you guys can kind of tell on this podcast, they have good chemistry. It's just they're chopping it up about audio. So if you love audio, whether it's SQ or any other type of audio, it's fun to listen to people talk about audio. That's why we do it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's all fun. We enjoy all types of podcasts and videos, everything about car audio. So we enjoy all the sides. I wouldn't consider myself a sound quality person. I don't consider myself a SPL person. I'm just a car audio person. So I love it all. But your shows are great. They're entertaining. I enjoy them. So I encourage everybody to check them out, subscribe, and listen to them when you're working or you're mowing the grass or whatever. That's what's the best thing about podcasts. People say, well, when are you going to listen to something like that? Well, don't you get in your car?
Anytime you want, right?
Yeah, anytime you want. I mean, you're sitting on your lawnmower, or you're, whatever, work around the house is perfect for that type of stuff, especially if you're a car audio person. You just want to hear more about it. But you mentioned, Ben, a few minutes ago about SQology and the events.
Uh-huh.
Can you get it a little bit more into the detail about SQology, how the event started, and maybe explain how all that works?
Yeah. Do you have that link up that you were just sharing your screen of the podcast?
Yes.
Share that again. And there you go. Scroll up to the very top there. You see that SQology image? That is our local shop, Mobile Audio Plus. And what you see is there the parking lot is full of cars. That is one of our first SQology events. So it's basically getting people together to host competitions for IASCA and MECA. And in this coming season, we're going to add Emma, which Cliff may want to expand on a little bit. It's largely a group of people who get together to compete in the various organizations. But more than that, it's a group of people who get together to check out each other's systems, to demo each other's systems, to listen to what other people are doing and building, and share information. At some of our events, we've had kind of a knowledge-sharing atmosphere. I don't know if Cliff wants to expand on that anymore. Go ahead, Cliff.
As far as the events, I mean, the main thing was trying to get more of a meet environment and get some kind of education component added to it, to where it wasn't just showing up, everybody scrambling, and having the same judge every week listen to your car and then get a trophy or not get a trophy. I've we've really minimized the trophy aspect of it, and focused on feedback to the competitors, or having a lot more to it than just a, here somebody's going to listen to your car for 5 minutes, write down a number, and here's your medal. So we put a lot of effort into making sure that we can diversify the opinions that are come out, the feedback, and trying to inject in as many new ideas as possible, and just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks and going from there. Neither one of us started out into this wanting to be event directors. Neither one of us, Ben probably more so than I had no desire to be an event director. And the whole initial
But
push
guess who
with
got stuck doing it?
right. Well, the whole initial push with SQology was, Ben kind of put the first show together, had SQ and SPL as a big show.
Oh yeah,
and
I forgot. We did do SPL.
Yeah, the first show, it was a horrible
First
experience.
or second, yeah.
Absolutely horrible experience.
Don't say that.
It was a horrible experience. Never doing it
was.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did. Ben really was the one that kind of pushed that first big show, and he really got into it, and really worked. He worked hard on it, and it was great, and it was fun. And I was like, man, maybe there was something to this. We did, Mecha and Iaska, SPL, sound quality, all of it. And it was all like halfway through it, you're throwing up your arms, and we're never going to do any of this again, But
would you still say every show?
I still say every show, yeah. Especially like 3 hours before it starts. Why do I do this? It's all horrible.
Uh-huh.
And then 3 hours after the show, all right, when we do the next one?
Uh-huh. It's scheduled. Sign up.
But yeah, I mean, it all started out being, and I was like, hey, I'd like to put some oomph behind SQology, kind of brand it, and you be the leader, and I'll work to kind of get things pushed from the behind. And then Ben just kind of disappeared.
Essentially.
So, yes. Yeah. So Ben's never there at most of the shows, but
that's actually my screen name in our little chat groups. Never there.
Never there.
Yes.
But no,
spirit. I'm behind the scenes.
So, and again, there was never, SQology to me is more of an idea. I mean, it's not one thing. It's an idea of just kind of the spirit of SQ, whatever that is at the time. I think it can roll with it. And, if we're having a downtime in get-togethers and events, then that's kind of where the podcast keeps us going. So that's why the podcast is so up and down. As I'm sure plenty of people are noting right now, there hasn't been an episode since last year. Sorry guys, but it's just not, I mean, again, for me personally, it's kind of just an extension of me, and being able to kind of put out there in a proactive way, positive things, hopefully, for sound quality. And there's just not really a rhyme or rhythm to it. We just do what we can do.
So largely due to Cliff's efforts, we've partnered with some other major shows that have some history. Those being the Steel Valley Regional major event and Aggieland. And what else do we have that are pretty major? The Hybrid Audio Show is become pretty major now. So it's cool to see support from people who have been successful in having large shows and want to incorporate the SQology name and mantra, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Oh, a lot of it is just they want me to do the hard work.
Well, yeah,
But with Aggieland and SVR both, SVR actually came out because I had the date they wanted. I already had a show scheduled for that date, and then they were like, "Hey, how about we do Steel Vibe this date? That's the only day we can do it." And I was like, "Okay, make an SQology event," and that's how it started. So, and then Aggieland was pretty much just talking to Chris Payton. It was like, "Hey, I just want to put the series of events together and be able to do some cool stuff and try new things." And he's typical Chris. Okay, let's do it. So, and then last year, he said, "I want to do it again." And he was serious. He announced no more Aggieland. And then we finally talked for a bit and he was like, "Okay, you take it over and we'll keep doing it." I was like, "Okay." So it's been fun and we've got to try a lot of new things. We've ticked some people off and made other people happy, and we've done bad things and good things along the way. But I think we're kind of finding, the path forward that people are really enjoying. And again, it's almost never about the trophy. It's about what did they learn and take away from the event, and that's what people are really gravitating to right now.
Yeah, and I heard from the first SQology Steel Valley, I think it was the first one or the second one, competitors like with big names like Steve Head hanging out in the parking lot late at night afterwards, helping some of the younger guys tune their cars. It's just that type of competitor helping competitor vibe that has really encouraged people to be involved. And it's really cool to see that. So along with those big events, we still have small events too, or smaller events. And it's really cool at those smaller events. A lot of people who have an SQ bug, I guess you would say, they heard about it. They read about it on the internet. They just want to come see what it's all about. So we have a lot of new people at the smaller events that come out and just want to check it out. And you'll see them walking around and talking to the competitors and asking to get a demo, and some people just walk around and keep to themselves, but you can just see it. There's always a line of new people coming in that are just interested and want to see what it's all about. So it's really cool to see that.
Yeah, go ahead, Derek.
I was going to say the guys who are listening to this or watching this who are into the heavy bass right now, make sure you wear your ear protection, because when you get a little older and you don't have as much room in the car, you're going to have to put, single sub or smaller subs. You're going to want to have that sound quality feel. But if you blow your ears out now, you're not going to be able to do that. So be like Big D, wear ear protection when you're enjoying your bass so that you can enjoy SQ in the future, because your likes and dislikes change over the years. A lot of people who think, oh, it's all about the bass and that's all they like right now, I guarantee you, if you stick with it long enough, you will change. Everybody kind of grows in different ways. Some people grow toward one side or the other, but just protect your hearing, because if it goes away, you can't tell anymore. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Go ahead, Rob.
Hey, well, speaking to the events, something I noticed, Derek puts on the OSS meet now twice a year. They may be there to see Derek or see the 12-volt talk guys or whatever it may be. But the real thing that they meet is they meet other people in their area that have the same mindset, the same loves and the passions, So that's really what comes out of it, that people meet other people in their area and they can share the hobby together. Or even, they may be a far distance and just chat over Facebook like we do.
Yeah, that is the cool part, and I appreciate that a lot about what you guys said, because I think in some ways, from the outside looking in, the SQ community in a certain way can be seen as the, pinky up in the air. I don't talk to people. And honestly, I mean, that's what's great to hear about you guys, and what you said about these events is that it's designed to teach people, the right things to do. You got experts there that are helping people tune their systems. I mean, anytime you're learning something, that's great. But just the idea that the camaraderie here within car audio is something that we need more, instead of this bashing one group or another or whatever, because we all might not like the same thing, but we're all humans, right? We want to get along and we want to enjoy the similar thing of car audio. So I appreciate you guys saying that, because that means a lot. And I think a lot of people who, maybe only saw from the outside the SQ people, or you don't want to talk to them because they're too uppity. I mean, that's great to hear that's kind of the idea behind SQology.
Yeah, I mean, and the whole purpose of like the show we did this past weekend from the beginning was I wanted to gear it to anybody who was a sound quality enthusiast who could come and virtually guarantee that they would have better tools than what they came with to have a better sounding car after they leave than when they came. And all of that is really about feedback. I mean, to me, it's one of those things where if somebody doesn't have the feedback to know what they can do to make their car objectively sound better, they just go around thinking they have, the best sounding car that they know. It's like saying, that I make the world's best barbecue because, I've talked to my 3 neighbors and they all said it's the best barbecue they've ever had. Well, they don't have the experience or, the palate to choose from of somebody who, goes all over the world eating barbecue. And that's really what we've focused on in all the events, is having qualified people listening, evaluating the vehicles in a judge, quote unquote standpoint, but not there to just put a number on a score sheet and say, it's bad, bye. That doesn't help anybody. The goal is for people who are really wanting to learn and get better at it and meet new people and everything else. I mean, we had, this past weekend, we had judges from, 10 different states and 3 different countries, including England and Germany. So, some of the best ears in the world, literally, being able to jump in every vehicle back to back and be able to give a qualified, basically opinion and evaluation of what they're hearing. And if a competitor or enthusiast or whomever, if somebody if one person tells you something, you're going to say whatever. But if 3 or 4 people tell you the same thing in the same day, within a few hours of each other, then, you go, okay, what do I need to do? And then behind that, we had 3 more very qualified people, Steve Head, Jeff Smith, and Tim Gowdy, who have all been doing this forever. And most anybody anywhere knows at least Jeff Smith and, Steve Head. But, had those guys there, not judging, but on hand to help the competitors tune or learn the score sheet better or work on their install, or if they had a breakdown, fix it, whatever. But, I mean, really, we're not there to demean the competitor as much as trying to help them proactively get better and throw all the resources we can at it. And that's what's made it amazing.
I was going to say, you say, we're not here to tell you, oh, hey, this car's bad, but we have had people come with some pretty bad systems.
Oh, yeah.
And in those times, like Cliff says, it's more of a support thing, to where we'll have whoever was just in the car and said, okay, this guy needs some help, we'll have them go and find somebody that we trust and say, hey, why don't you go get in the car with this guy and maybe give him some guidance. So
I mean, with that, I will say that, I mean, as far as the big events, the 3 different events have I would say, a different feel to them overall. Aggieland, I mean, this past Aggieland, we had $15,000 cash on the line
when
for the
there's money
winners.
involved, it's a different story.
So, I mean, if you put $10,000 down, winner take all, it's not as friendly. But I mean, it's still, this year was actually a really great environment. I was surprised how good it was, considering, but it's still, I mean, it's about the prize. I mean, you're going there with $15,000 potential to win. You're going to put everything on the line to do it, and you're going to battle. The event we did this past weekend is pretty much the opposite. I mean, it's there for everybody to work together, and hey, if you win a trophy, great, but that's not what we're here to do. And then Steel Valley Regional is really more the prestige show. I mean, yeah, people, I won Steel Valley, that's a big deal. And because I mean, that was a big deal when I was first competing in the late 90s, early 2000s. So, yeah, they all three have very different feels to them. But for me, the goal is to really encourage the people who come, especially the ones who aren't as good. I mean, we have one guy, Jonathan Avery. His first SQ show ever was last year at the Georgia show, and he's an SPL guy competing with an SPL car. You know, he's got mid bass and in boxes in front of the seats. I mean, the car is not set up for sound quality. You know, it's not the typical sound quality car. But he's, and like I said, last year was his first time ever showing up, and again, it was because he kind of knew what was going on. And I mean, he just had a blast and loved it and got qualified to finals. As far as I know, went to finals. And then he traveled from Georgia to Southern Texas for Aggieland a month ago. And then he was at the show again this month, and he keeps getting a little better and gets more advice and keeps kind of working on what he's got. And he just has a blast with it. So, yeah, it's been fun to watch.
So, speaking to that, would you have any tips for someone that's never competed? Like, what should they expect? What should they do? Just any tips in that range.
It's going to vary. It's going to vary by the show they go to. I mean, if you go to a show just because it has sound quality, it doesn't mean that it's going to cater to what you're after. If somebody's coming to one of our events, I mean, there's almost guaranteed to be somebody that you recognize in some way, either that trolls Facebook too much, or one of us are going to be there. And I would really, no matter how busy that person looks or anything else, make a buzz line for somebody that you kind of recognize. If you're not the kind of person to, I don't think any of us are super extroverts. So if you can kind of find somebody that will give you an opening, try to get them to introduce you to somebody else, get a demo of their car. I mean, it's like anything, there's a barrier to entry. There's not a red carpet there, but it's worth it. Trying to either get with somebody that that's going to be there beforehand. I mean, this is what's great about Facebook and everything else, is you can reach out to these people. And, if somebody reaches out to me, and at least I can hook them up with somebody else that is there at the show. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just making that human connection with somebody else. Once you do that, that opens up the doors to meet somebody else and get into their car and demo that. And then they go, oh, you need to come over here and listen to this. And I mean, like for me, when I first went to Euro finals last year, I didn't know anybody. You're going in a completely different area. 3/4 of the people don't speak English. And I'm an introvert by nature, so I'm not like, hey, here I am. But again, I was kind of able to make that one introduction, and that guy's like, oh, you gotta come listen to this car and this car and this car, and then come over here, and then let's sit down and eat for a bit and talk and learn, and then go over. And I mean, within a day of doing that, I mean, I'd met 3/4 of the countries. So I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. If you go to an SQ event and you see everybody sitting in cars, and that's kind of the perception, is that it's totally antisocial because there's a bunch of closed vehicles, when really it's not. It's just a bunch of one-on-one interactions. It's much more personable once you kind of figure that out. But I think the biggest mistake I've seen of guys who come into it is they park in the far corner, they sit in their car the whole time waiting for a judge to come. They get judged, they sit in their car the rest of the time, and then they come up for trophies, and then they're mad that they didn't win. And that's and it then they get turned off of it. And I understand that, but like I said, there's not a red carpet. Put yourself out there, and you'll reap the benefits.
Yeah, so just do like me, just forge through, no matter if it's awkward or not, just keep going.
Right.
And then you'll get to a spot that feels right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that was a great description there, and I also agree with listening, to several different cars, because there may be a specific sound that sounds better to you, and then you don't really know what it is until you hear a specific car that sounds like that. So I've listened to not near as many as you guys have, but I know kind of what I like based on the systems that I've heard. So that's kind of where I go. And Ben, did you have anything to add to that?
No, that's exactly. I was just going to butt in several times just to listen to cars. And like Cliff said, you see a lot of new people come just kind of looking around, checking things out, and they're afraid to ask to listen to a car. And I would say 95% of the competitors are more than willing and eager to open their cars up to you and let you sit inside and experience what they've put together. So you really learn what the reference sound that people are looking for is that way. People describe systems as bright or as warm or as bassy or whatever. So you kind of have to learn, okay, what are the judges looking for and what really makes the tonality that scores well on a score sheet. So as you say, you have heard systems that you like personally, and you kind of know the sound that you like. So you have to learn. Each judge is kind of that way, like that they have a certain sound they're looking for, and part of the whole competition thing is figuring out who's going to be judging you and having been judged by them enough times to figure out what they're looking for in sound.
Yeah, I would jump in there just to say that I don't believe that there's a reference for any of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest thing is the better judges are going to be the ones that have had more listening experiences. So I mean, the more listening experiences you have, no matter where that is, you kind of pick up on the positive aspects of it. Every single listening environment in the world has its compromises. There is no perfect system of any kind in any shape or form,
right?
No matter where it is. I mean, studio, each different scenario has a little bit different aspect and style to it. Like, I mean, your studios are going to sound somewhat similar because they're a similar sized room with a similar setup with its own compromises. The cars, the top level cars now, I mean, and I would say this is, I would hope we've had at least maybe a 5 or 6%, contribution factor to this. But I mean, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago at finals, it was, hey, what car sounded good? I'm gonna go listen to those. Now at finals, it's tough to not. They're all good. I mean, they all are sounding really good. I mean, I listen to a lot of cars at all the events, and I mean the overall aspect of how the cars have come in elevated performance. I mean, it's getting tougher and tougher to pick between them, and
a lot of that has come down to the internet and people
information being out there.
Exactly, people figured out how to tune a DSP and look for a target curve and figuring out what that target curve is,
or finding a tuner to tune their car for them, and then
too.
I mean, there's a lot of similar sounding cars because you have
the same guy
4 or 5.
A bunch of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And I'm not. Hey, I don't care how we get there. I just want cars to sound better.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. People go for this. Well, what headphones do I need to listen to, or what? We're going for a live sound. We're not going for live sound because it's reproduced. I mean, there's no way we can replicate live, but all those experiences add up to what things should sound like and replicating that.
If you're really interested in the last 2 minutes of what Cliff just said, I highly recommend the Ethan Weiner podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Cliff interviewed Ethan, who is a wealth of information and really got deep into talking about reference and how live sound reference isn't recorded sound reference. And even when you record live sound, there's just so many different nuances that go into that. So I highly recommend that one. And then also I remember, I think it was Gary Biggs' episode, dove pretty deep into how he was trying to figure out what the different judges were listening for, and went so far as to put a tape recorder under the seat. So when two judges were in the car talking to each other, he could hear the interaction about saying, okay, it on this track, oh, did you hear this? And did you hear this? And just trying to figure out what exactly they're listening for. So I wouldn't recommend trying to tap into your judges this day and age. But
don't do that. You'll get some weird stuff.
Yeah, no, interesting perspective for sure.
And a thing that I would say is someone coming from the SPL lanes, when you're trying to go SQ, you got to realize that you are getting judged. Don't take it personally. It's different from a meter, and that's what I think happens to a lot of people. It's like he didn't like this, he didn't like that, and they take it personally. You're going up there to be judged by a judge.
Yeah.
So
They're
keep
there
that
to
in
tell you
mind
what's
when
wrong.
you go.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and beyond that, I mean, these days, if you're going from the top level to the top level, the difference between SPL and sound quality now is so drastic. I mean, yeah, it's kind of like saying a Formula One and a NASCAR are compatible. It's they both have four wheels, but just because you're really good at one doesn't mean you're going to be really good at the other without a lot of work. I mean, I could not dream 20 years ago, maybe, but now I couldn't dream of going over SPL and having a chance. I can't even figure out the science behind looking at the boxes, much less, what's actually going on there. I have no idea. I mean, and I respect so much where they've gone. I mean, the fact that what was, the loudest systems in the world 25 years ago now is just, hey, that's my daily driver. It's crazy how far it's come. I mean, I feel like the hardcore SPL competitor days are different now than they were. And I wish they could intermingle more, but I mean, there's just not much reason anymore. I mean, I think that was one of the biggest, again, this is no knock on anybody, but I mean, the biggest success of what we've done was because we cut SPL out of it and focused on what we were doing. And that's really made it better on everybody, I think, because there's also always been the, push, I think, from the SQ guys that the SPL guys got to cross over and try this. Oh, well, there's so many of you, there's 200 of you, so why don't you guys come over here? And the SQ guys start proselytizing to the SPL guys, and they're just different things. I mean, it's like mountain biking and road bike, any you can use so many references, but if you're into a thing, do that thing with everything you got and enjoy it and be okay with it. And I think if the more both sides can kind of focus on what they're doing and how they can maximize the potential for it, they'll all come out ahead. And I want to see everybody flourish. But for us, what really flourished was focusing on sound quality.
So that was a great description. Thank you for that. The next, we're going to move on a little bit. We're kind of going over in time here, but it seems like we haven't really gone that long because this has been so cool. But the next question we had was about the amplifiers. So there's a lot of talk on the internet about sound quality, and certain classes and class Ds can't have sound quality and has to be a class AB, class H, a tube amp, whatever. How do you guys feel about class D for sound quality?
Richard Clark.
I've got two vehicles that I'm competing currently. One has 6 class AB, nice, really high-end amplifiers. The other one has one 8-channel class D amplifier. Everything's built into it, including the digital sound processor. And that one is my daily driver. So if I didn't tell people that, I don't know if anybody would ever know. And I don't know. That's all I'm going to say. Cliff, now it's your turn and see what I did there.
I don't care. I mean, an amp's an amp. As long as it doesn't have a issue, I don't care. I've judged plenty of vehicles. I've heard plenty of vehicles. I've demoed my own different vehicles. At one point, one of the vehicles I competed with had 6 JL HD Class D 751s, one on every speaker. And that's technically now a sub amp. It used to be full range. But I've never, ever had somebody get in and go, oh, this sounds like this because it's Class A, B, or, oh, this is Class D. I mean, Mark Eldridge has won however many trophies with all Class D amplifiers in his car. And it's had days where it sounded really, really good, and it's had days where it sounded bad. I mean, the biggest thing is making sure that everything works together. If you're running sometimes certain head units don't like certain, amplifiers and vice versa. I'm not going to say that the head units themselves, when it comes down to those components, they're all so tight. You can make more difference with a couple very minor adjustments on EQ than any difference that those signals, like a signal processor itself. I'm not saying there aren't differences between them, but as far as by itself, not affecting the signal any. Same with head units, same with amplifiers. All this stuff is so good, for the most part, that the differences between them just aren't there. I mean, it's perceptual. It's supporting what you want. It's, the people you want, the people who support you. If you like that amplifier because it is whatever and says whatever it will do, that's fine. But at the end of the day, the most important part is, putting your system together properly, installing it properly in the right locations, following best practices, and then tuning it to maximize and minimize compromises. And you're always going to have compromises, but the compromise is usually not that. I've seen so many people switch out amplifiers or switch out head units or switch out this and go, oh, there's so much of a difference, and nobody can hear it. It's just not there. I'm not saying that one thing doesn't sound different than the other because of whatever reason, but you can negate those differences very easily. And I'm honestly not trying to parrot Richard Clark there, but I mean, I believe it 100%. The wire, the amplifier, those components, there might be measurable difference, but there's not enough that is worth worrying about as long as it's not broken.
It definitely gives the internet stuff to talk about, though.
It does, that for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, Rob and I have talked about it before, and it's very interesting that the SQ guys kind of have the same response that Rob and I have had. I mean, sure, I love nothing more than an old school Hyphonic Zeus that was made by Z Audio back in '91 because it's cool.
Right.
But to say that sounds better than, a JL HD 1200/1, to my ears, I can't tell the difference. So I thought it was interesting that your explanation was kind of what we've already talked about in previous shows. And I think a lot of people put a lot of it gives them something to talk about,
And there's people who go to great lengths to try and prove or disprove, or to hear differences in the amps, or to compare amps against one another. I don't want to put him on the spot, but a good friend of ours, Matt Hall, has done amplifier shootouts. He gets people in a room and has people compare, and they write up a dissertation of what they hear, and people swear they hear differences, and the amplifiers make all the difference in the world.
Now, obviously, to interject there, obviously, if you have the speakers and everything in line to do it, a 150 watt amplifier is going to sound different and better than a 25 watt amplifier. I mean, it's like saying that
you have to compare apples to apples,
exactly,
as far as output levels, wattage, etc. goes.
Right.
But all those being equal, there are people who swear the stage opens up and things get wider and more focused. And
now the only difference I will say between that is noticeable is only if somebody is pushing things too far, and so it's irrelevant. But if you are running a Class D amplifier into clipping versus a Class AB amplifier into clipping, the Class AB is going to do it much more gracefully than the Class D. But that's just because you're doing it wrong. Get a bigger amplifier. It doesn't mean that it's because one inherently sounds better within its spec. I
just heard Clifton say "Go Brazilian." He didn't even say it.
Wow. See, I knew everybody that comes on this podcast, they declare bankruptcy within like 2 weeks. So
shots fired.
So we haven't even touched on the network yet.
Oh, hey,
really?
I was fixing to get that. I'm skipping a section.
Oh,
I want to know, are you guys part of a Cardio Elite network?
Absolutely.
See, Cliff, we're not supposed to talk about it.
Is it like the
Well, but-
Freemasons? How do
I'm
we
afraid
get in?
the screen just went blank for Cliff, so I'm afraid that they're listening in.
So we have an episode, if you look at our podcast, called The Network. And if you don't know what we're talking about, you should drop what you're doing after this episode and go listen to that, because it'll enlighten you.
Or you'll be scared out of your wits.
Can you put in a word for us? How do we get in?
Ben's the one with all the resources with the network guys. So
Again, we're not supposed to talk about.
Do we
the network.
have to wear robes, or it's like Fight Club? Oh
yes.
no, man!
Yes, it's like Fight Club, to where the first rule is you don't talk about it.
Oh no!
See that this is going to be such a circle. You're not going to get anywhere on this one. So
Yeah, we just had to bring it up, because
Yeah,
we've heard stories.
Want to wear we imagine you guys like there's some piece of fine like the Audison Thesis amplifier in the middle or something, and you wear robes and then chant. I don't know what it would be like. Would it be Flashdance or Spanish Harlem or something like that? Is that the theme song or
definitely Spanish Harlem?
Yeah, Aaron Hardison has the best video to Spanish Harlem. You're gonna have to look that one up on the YouTubes.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out.
All right, yeah, we're excited about getting into the network because we've been outside of it for so long. So we'll hit you up afterwards so we can get our green cards and join you. So the last question we have is super important, and we ask all of our guests when we remember. And you're either gonna know what we're talking about, or you're gonna say, "Why in the heck you asked me this?" But did either one of you guys, were you into BMX? Bicycle, motocross, freestyle, racing, anything like that? Can I get a yes or a no?
Does that fall into sports?
Sure.
Sports ball.
Yeah. No. No.
Okay, it's fine. We just ask because we find a lot of people that are into car audio or that are almost our age were big into BMX. So that's why we asked.
Autocrossed. I don't know. So that's not a bike, but auto sports, yeah. Bicycles, no.
I raced road bicycles for about 10 years, but BMX, no. I mean, I had a BMX bike when I was like 7, but I never really actually BMX'd.
Okay, well,
we've been striking out here lately.
We have been kind of.
We were on a roll for a minute, but
hey, you need to get Nick Scott on here. He's a skater. Jeff Smith is the BMXer. Yeah. Jeff Smith is the BMXer.
Yeah, I've heard Jeff mention it when he's been on with Dean and Fernando and 5 Star. He's talked about it a bit. So yeah, we'll have to hit him up.
I know there are several competitors and people in the industry who are into long distance biking. Scott Buwalda rides bikes. He's
Ron Buffington
saying that. Ron Buffington. I know. I'm drawing a blank, but there are several guys who are into riding distance on bikes.
Cool. Well, my challenge still stands for anybody who wants to do a wheelie challenge, but it has to be a mountain bike or a comfort bike is what they call it.
Oh.
I'll challenge you to a wheelie.
So if we're talking wheelies, I do own a unicycle.
No.
There you go.
That's an eternal wheelie.
Yeah.
A BMW owner would have a unicycle. That's how that rolls.
Okay, it's from when I was like 12, but it still exists in my possession. Yes.
Yeah. And there's no way to signal on a unicycle either, so it works out.
Yeah.
So it works like this: BMW network unicycle.
Now you know the trifecta to get in.
All right, I'm gonna have to work on all 3 of those.
Yeah. I don't have a BMW either. It's okay.
All right.
For sale, by the way. Just saying.
No. Oh my gosh. You're like a walking infomercial, I swear. Who invited this guy on?
Hey, put it out there while you can, man. Comment to the Facebook post and tell people where they can buy your BMW.
Cool. You just hit me up and we'll talk. How about that?
There's not much BMW left, but it used to be.
Yeah. Did you see the picture? Side
go ahead.
Here, Cliff. Did you see the picture I posted yesterday on the dummies page?
I don't.
No. You must not have. Okay.
I'll check.
All right. Yeah.
I haven't been on the internet for a while.
All right. All right.
So what do you say, Derek, that before we go into our after show that we thank our super chats and sign out? We think about that.
Sounds
I've got 'em written
good.
down. I've got them written down here. You want me to read them off?
Yeah, I'll go. I got a couple of them, so I'll thank
All right.
guys first. Rick Quattlebaum,
Charles Brown
Brandon Hanna.
and Gene Nava.
Thanks, guys. And
You're
a
the
big shout out here to Cliff and Ben for joining us and telling us about SQology and talking about the network and all this uncomfortable stuff. We had a great time here listening to them kind of back up a lot of the things that Rob and I talk about, because we've talked about some of the same subjects. They've had a lot more cool guests on there. We've had some cool ones too, but we really urge you guys to go check them out. If you just do a Google search for SQology,
that's not Squology.
And by the way, real quick, for all of you who will go out and subscribe now and follow the podcast, especially, there will be a part of the Richard Clark podcast within 1 week. So now is the time.
You just
committed
yourself.
It's actually ready. So
awesome.
Within 1 week, it will be posted.
All right.
There you go. We lit the fire under their feet, guys. We got them lit up.
If you hadn't had me,
here on 12 Volt Talk,
if you hadn't had me on here, it might have been another year or two. So,
well, that's cool. We look forward to listening to that. So again, check out, if you're on YouTube, check us out, youtube.com/12etalk. You can check the video description. I have links already to SQology on Facebook and also to their SoundCloud page, which if you use your cell phone and go to any of your podcast apps, you can find it. Just do search for Car Audio or search for SQology. You'll find it, and you can find us as well. And again, thanks again. Big shout to Ben and Cliff for joining us. Thank you so much for your time tonight and for telling us more about SQology. And I think that's about all we have to say. Rob?
Yeah, man. That's it. Excuse us. We out of here.
Alrighty. Don't you love those outros? We've worked on that hard and long and all that.
I never know how to never know how I wrap it up. I'm like, all right, so okay, thanks. Okay, thank you. Oh, you're awesome. No, you're awesome.
You hang up first.
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah, we had some really weird chat things going on down here. I actually had to boot some. That's the first time I've had to do that in a while. And
I saw something about unicorn hair guy early on.
Yeah, I don't know, but the one I saw was just getting like way off topic and out of hand. So anyway, that's not the norm around here. But you guys in the chat, I'm gonna scroll through here. But if you have any questions that you would like for us to shoot these two guys,
well, I got a question to start us off.
Go ahead.
Why do you BMW guys always have to put your subs under the seats?
Mine
What's up
aren't.
with that?
Because that's where BMW puts them.
Yeah.
No, that's a newer BMW thing. Mine's an
it's
old
not a
BMW.
It's not a 4x4 BMW like yours.
Yeah, no, but for real, like it's that they do from the factory put the mid bases under the seats now, and so that's just kind of what most people, if they don't want to go cutting the car up, that's where they've got to put them.
Well, and the problem is that obviously the doors are the easiest if a car already has doors, and so if the door mid bases aren't there, then you pretty much have to go underneath the seats. I mean, even like some of the like Scott's BMWs, both he just left it underneath the seat. It's just too much hassle to try to cut kick panels and everything else.
Yeah, that was funny that you choose BMWs because they're pretty much notoriously difficult for stereos in my experience.
Yeah.
That's because that's what he had.
Well, trying to integrate into a factory BMW system for a lot of people is a challenge. There are groups and people out there who have made great strides in making that easier for people. But yeah, it's a lot of people struggle with, hey, how do I get up? And that's not just true for BMWs these days. It's most modern cars. There's a factory amplifier that has signals going to different speakers that aren't full range, and you have to sum signal. And there's things called all-pass filters that are applied in newer cars, and you have to You just have
Sum
to
up the signal and all
integration
that, yeah.
into modern vehicles is just overall more difficult. So
Yeah, that's why I drive a 2000 Suburban that leaks everywhere.
right.
Yeah, I got an '05 Suburban just like that.
Yeah, it leaks from the seals from the window. It leaks onto my driveway. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
be
It drives my
leaking.
wife nuts because I put an aftermarket head unit in it, and that's it. But it's got the factory Bose system in it, and so like you go to volume level like 3 on the head unit, and it's full blast. She's like, I don't know what to do. It's like I go down, it's off, turn it up. It's kind of like Ben and I, you know, one notch this way, it's off. One notch that way, it's way too loud.
Yeah, what the hell? Like everybody's saying my audio is really low.
They
I
do it
can
to
hear you
me. They
fine.
do it to me every week.
Yeah,
man.
no, your
It's a
audio is
thing,
fine.
man.
Really?
I think it's just because you're a softer talker.
I mean, I'm even getting texts from friends right now saying, "Hey, we can't hear you."
Yeah.
Cliff comes on and it's
I think
overpowering.
they're not using headphones. I think they're just listening off their iPhone or something. Maybe.
All right.
Yeah, the levels for me sounding almost
Okay.
identical between all three of you guys.
Weird.
I think the difference is that you're kind of bass heavy, Ben. So
Oh, if you're
it might be
listening
harder
on
to
voice.
understand just because it's not as clear.
Hmm.
Like
You need to work on your frequency response.
It's
Yeah.
the proximity.
I got this
effect.
dang
Yes.
bass head in here.
Oh,
or just back away from the mic a little
now
bit.
I'm getting messages that say my audio is just fine. So
This
Nobody-
is how you know you are the real Hi-Fi Vega of the
Right.
duo, because this happens to me every single week.
huh. Okay.
John Olds in the chat, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate that. I'm going to share something here for those in the chat that care anything about it, because some people probably won't.
What is that?
I did a quick look through some of my old pictures.
Huh.
So that's a 1987 Haro Sport. I don't have it anymore. I sold these a few years ago to a dude in, Pennsylvania or something. He gave me crazy money. Yeah, these are like the BMX guys now. If you go on eBay and search for specific bikes like this, I mean, they are ridiculously priced. I mean, you think old school car audio stuff is expensive? These guys are paying crazy money for these bicycles. But anyway, I was just somebody in the chat room mentioned Kuwahara, and actually Kuwahara was my first BMX bike, and had to show off some of the stuff I had before I sold it. So that's fun. Little side gig. Everybody's got some, history that they like to talk about, and BMX for me is one.
Yeah, that's what makes it so complicated for me. Is it's all my main day stuff and all my side stuff is all car audio. I just don't know when to quit. Oh, that's cool.
Yes, that's me on the top of a 8-foot quarter pipe.
Looks just like you.
Yeah, it does, don't it? I have that same 6-pack right now. I can tell you.
and hair.
And there.
Who knew Big D was blonde?
Yeah, Big D was a blonde during the summertime. Sure was.
I didn't know that, and I've known Big D quite a while now.
That's my little secret.
So, how do I hang on? Where is my share? Is it sharing my stuff now?
Not yet.
You got to double click it.
It's like this is like the SPL of chats. I can't figure it out at all.
So when you were asking how do you fail at car audio, this is my can you see my stuff now?
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah, this is my attempt at car audio installation.
You suck at it.
Yeah. So and Tom Myers has some similar pictures actually.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as you put a beauty panel or some kind of panel over it, nobody ever sees it.
Exactly. That's
It covers up the smoke and everything.
so
That's
you
right.
You go from that to you have a professional do it instead, and it ends up looking more like.
Yeah.
Do,
I mean, it still looks the same underneath the panel. Just now there's
Oh,
really pretty
yeah.
panels over
Right. So here's what the professional makes it look like.
Yeah, that's gorgeous.
Yeah. See, I switch equipment out way too often to do something like that.
And
See, that was
I can't
always
think
my
what-
problem. I was like, well, what if I get something better? I can't possibly
Yeah.
actually install this thing. I just
It's
gotta leave it
gotta
sitting
be
there for a bit.
right.
It's got to be the same exact size as the last thing was.
Let me see. When you talk about Swiss cheese and this is what happens when you try and move your BMW underseat woofers to the kick panels. This is the fender removed from the car, and this is the speaker now vented into the fender well.
Yeah, our buddy Jason done that on his. What year is his Corona? Toyota Corona. It's a '69, I think.
Right,
He
and
had to
this
do the
is
same thing.
this is what we do to dashes in BMWs.
Oh Lord.
So we stick things. Oh, there you go. That's a good picture. How's that?
Ouch.
Yeah.
You should have sent us that so we could have used it as like
Yeah.
the thumbnail for the podcast.
Oh, right.
SQology guys on tonight.
Yeah.
See, it's really
But-
easy to do
but-
SQ. You just got to take your whole dash apart, take your fenders off,
Right.
cut the car to where it's not integral. You can't drive it anymore without killing you, and then you can do SQ.
And
Very
these are where you put the
accessible
mid bases. So this is the front
Yeah.
side of that back picture from the fender that I was showing you. And that's
Ben's just scaring everybody off now.
yeah.
Yeah, you
Okay.
should have just taped some bookshelf speakers around the B
Yeah.
pillars. A pillars, I should say.
Or
Right.
some piezos somewhere. Yeah, I mean, the piezo's got to be somewhere in the install.
Right.
I mean, how do you hear it without bullet tweeters?
Oh my god.
Or the 4-ways 10-inch tri quad axles or
Yeah.
whatever we saw that time in the finals.
Yeah, the more axials you have, the better it is.
I never knew they made a 10-inch whatever that was that Rob and I saw on that guy's door. I was like, what is that? And it was like 4 or 5 different drivers along, and it was in his door, and it was a 10-inch, and like it was designed that way. It wasn't thrown together.
Well, and we don't often get to listen to legit loud cars, and we both at the spring meet got to sit in EXO's little blue car, and that thing. I've never said anything like that before.
It's one thing to think when you think of a loud system and it's just painfully loud and just ouch my ears, but that one was just, it was a body moving experience. I mean, seriously, it did not sound that loud to my ears, but my body was just like, what is going on? It was pretty wicked.
Yeah. Nice. I saw you guys had on the question sheet. Have you ever sat in a vehicle that's 150 decibels or experienced an SPL vehicle? And I've been to all kinds of big shows where SPL has been a huge thing, and I've heard those cars from 50 feet away or more. So yeah, I've heard them, but I've never. I can't say I've actually sat in one of those vehicles and experienced it. It's partly because I know what it can do to my eardrums, and I want to protect my hearing.
Yeah.
So maybe one of these days I'll throw in some.
Maybe once we get to the point where everybody is charging for demos, then we can exchange demos, and then somebody can get a sound quality demo that they'd never had before, and we'll exchange it for an SPL demo that we've never had before, and it'll work out great.
Yeah.
There
Barter
you go.
system. Back to the barter system. That's the way. Yeah.
That's one step closer to the network too.
Yeah.
So I see some people commenting and saying, hey, I don't want to have to destroy my car to make a car sound great. And
You don't.
The flip side of that is my daily driver is a Durango RT, and everything is integrated.
That sounds better.
Out of the way.
Sorry.
Oh, come on, Cliff. That's the vehicle with the Class D single amp that has everything built into it, and there's really nothing to see. And yes, okay, technically I did cut holes in that car too. Well, my installer cut holes in that car too, but didn't have to.
It was just the whole rear floor pan. It wasn't like that much.
Well, do I have that also? Oh, I.
But
did.
that was just
Yeah.
for the subs because he was
Right.
trying to be stealthy.
I was just So my subwoofers are firing out through the bottom of the floor in the back, and I did that largely so that they didn't take up any cargo room in the back. So I have two 12s in there, but the factory floor, the cargo floor is still there, and I have all the usable space. I have a family, so I have to cart things around. But otherwise, that vehicle is you would never know that it was, it has a big system in it.
Yeah, and USQ guys try to blame the SPL guys for destroying vehicles.
Also, say my favorite, my personal favorite car of mine that I've had was a I don't even know what year it was, a something Dodge Neon, and I cut nothing in it. It was all factory locations. And the only thing that was cut in my last big competition vehicles was the kick panels, but pretty much everything else was left factory. So, and there's a lot of people out there. I mean, there's bins in, that higher class and where everything gets cut up, but I'd say 80+% of the cars are not at all, and you don't have to get there unless you have a vehicle that just doesn't like it, that you have to do a lot of stuff to.
And the first one I seen actually cut their floorboard like that was Howard Cantor's vehicle. He had like 13W7 or something firing straight into the ground. That was a trip.
That's the bottom. That's looking up from underneath my Durango. This is a spare tire well, and so you're looking from the outside of the car into the inside of the car there.
So I'm guessing you don't drive that in the rain?
No, actually, so that's the oh my god picture, right? So the more finished pictures are, hey, we have a nice PVC baffle with grills. Here's my installer looking through from the underside of the vehicle.
Good shot.
But if you come down further, here we go. So this is how it looks now. Like, so you don't see anything. It's protected. The grills are over the subs, spare tires back in place, and nobody would ever know. I take the thing to the dealership for work, and nobody's ever said anything about, oh, hey, you have big holes in your car. So.
Oh, see, you're very brave. Is this your wife's vehicle? Vehicle?
This is my daily. This is my Durango.
Oh, okay. So I'm saying you do not put a system in your wife's vehicle, because if anything happens, you were going to get a phone call, a text, or something. If the aux isn't working, this isn't working. I just try to stay all the way away.
So
from
my wife has been pretty spoiled. We've been together for a long time, and every single car she's had, I've done something with as far as audio. Except for her. So last summer we bought her a new Accord. She's got an 18 Accord Touring that's a really nice car. And the only reason I haven't done anything with that yet is because the factory integration piece isn't ready for it yet. So I'm waiting for PAC to release an Amp Pro for that car, and then it'll be game on with that one. But again, the goal with integrating into the factory system is that everything will operate as it does now. So
yeah. See, the problem with me, here's what happens. I put something in there, and her Bluetooth on her factory head unit messes up. Now that's my fault.
Right.
That's my fault because I touched it and I put an amp, and if this wasn't in there, the Bluetooth would have been perfect.
But see, she's been so accustomed to good audio now that she really hates the factory system in that Accord. Like, I hear about it all the time. She's ready for a good system in that car.
See, so my wife and I met in car audio, like I said earlier. Her grandpa started a car audio shop in like 1946. So like her whole family is car audio, and she's had basically a factory system since like 2007. So she would be fine with having an aftermarket system. I just don't know anybody to do it.
Cliff,
is her grandpa still around?
He died a few years, and maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But yeah, her uncles both took over the store for a long time, and then it closed in like 2008. But yeah, it was she worked in car audio from the time she was like 14 or 15. And like I said, how we met, their store had a competition team that did both sound quality and SPL. So they would travel to the shows. I was living in Nashville at the time. So yeah, it was pretty cool, because basically every weekend or every other weekend, we saw each other at shows and everything, and then finally started dating and got engaged, and 4 kids later, here we are.
Hey, I got a side message here asking for us to expand on Emma, because we touched on it during the episode, but then we never wrapped back around to it. Do you want to put a plug in for that real quick, Cliff?
Well, I don't know if he needs a plug, but basically, what was it? Monday morning, my days are all ran together. I think it was Monday morning. The press release went out that we were bringing SQology, bringing Emma to the United States. So there will actually be a EMA USA.
So what's EMA, first of all?
So EMA is a European mobile
Multimedia.
There you go. Association. I don't know. There's little letters underneath it to say what it is.
It's
you can
some
read those.
girl named Emma, right?
Right. So anyway, EMA started like around 2001, very much based on the IASCA roots, but obviously in Europe. It's based in Germany. But a couple of years ago, by happenstance, through work, essentially, I ended up at the Eurofinals in Salzburg and Austria, and then went through the judges training just because I wanted to see, how other people did it. So I told them up front, I was like, hey, I know I'm not going to be a judge or get a certification or anything, I'll pay for it, but I just want to go through it and get the experience. So went through it, and then it was a pretty amazing experience. They really hit kind of all the buttons, and so then at the end of it, I was certified, and then just kind of stayed. And then, of course, once people within the sound quality community saw that we were certified for head judges training, then everybody's like, "Oh, when's Emma coming to the U.S.?" So we really it's been a slow crawl, walk, run type thing. It's not at run yet; it's still around crawl. But I mean, as far as the overall goal with it, and as was clearly stated in the press release, the goal is to make it work in unison with the existing organizations of IASCA and MECA. It's not there to be in competition with or anything like that. It's there to, again, my whole thing is connecting people and trying to learn from new experiences. And, that really came to fruition with the show this past weekend, where we had 4 judges from England and 1 judge from Germany come over and actually judge the vehicles that were at the event as they would if they were in one of their events there. So, for example, install and sound quality have been separated from the beginning in MECA and for a long time in IASCA, whereas EMA pretty much requires it. So all 29 cars that were competing this past weekend had install judging along with the event, which is very different for us. And again, it's a new perspective, and that's valuable because I think that helps educate and hopefully make cars sound better, and that's what we're here for. So again, it'll be just alongside the events, the SQology events we're doing now with IASCA and MECA. It's not there to replace anything or make anybody's life more difficult, but I think it will make for better cars and better sounding cars. So that's the goal.
Yeah, and I seen one of our old school guys, our boy Dale Skaggs.
Yep, he won.
Yeah, he was in there and won that. So he's on the old school pages and all that. He's been around for a while.
Yes, sir. No, it was cool to see because he's not competed for I think 5 years or so, and yeah, it was cool to see him come back. And I mean, the big reason for him was because he was ready for install. He's got his book and his his pictures and diagrams and everything else, and I mean that was a big part of what helped him was having the install and sound together. But I mean, the whole idea with the install, just before anybody gets scared who might be sound quality listening, I mean, they're really starting at max points and then saying, okay, you got knocked down on this because of this. This is what you need to do to maximize your points. Not, well, you just got to work harder. You know what I mean? The idea is for everybody to be able to maximize their points in install. And, they can do that pretty tangibly. I mean, all the cars at the European finals, pretty much all of them, except in the very high classes, they all just maximize their install score sheet just because they've gotten used to it. And it makes for better looking cars. It makes for competitors that are more excited because, again, sound quality on its own is kind of boring. Sound quality going to show the judges are the ones who are the athletes, if you want to say that. All the right now a sound quality only event, yes, there's lots of preparation. Yes, you got to get there. Yes, it's a lot of money, all those things. But, at the end of the day, the sound quality competitor is kind of handing over their keys and hoping for the best. Whereas when you're having to do a presentation of the vehicle, whether you did the install or not, you need to know your own vehicle and being able to present that makes it more exciting, especially if other people can see it. And also like with Emma, I mean, you lose points if your car isn't open during the event. So that's a big thing. Like when I'm over there and I take all the pictures and put them on the SQology page when I'm in Europe, I mean, I never had to ask anybody to open up their car. All the cars are open. I mean, unless they're actively giving a demo at the time, all the cars are open. You can go see it and see what's going on with every single one of them. And it's a whole different experience, because it's then interactive for the people involved. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for it to, again, raise all boats and just up the game.
Sounds good to me. Cool beans. Anybody else have any questions for these guys?
If they haven't fallen asleep yet.
I think Big D, he gets on the verge. He cut out the mellow yellow, so it put a damper on his energy.
Yeah, sorry about that. I've been trying to do better with sodas and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I usually get up pretty early for work too. I usually get up at 5, and yeah, so days that I don't get like a little power nap when I get home, like I didn't today, then it gets to be this time, and I'm.
Yeah, I know the feeling. It's been about 2 weeks since I last slept, so I'm on the same page.
Yeah, it's definitely not the content. This is great. This is good stuff. Well, I don't see any other questions that we missed. People are just pretty much chatting amongst themselves.
I see T-Fade in there.
Yeah,
I see several names I recognize in here. That's cool. See all these people joining.
Somebody, Thomas Byers, just asked if it's worth making the Knoxville show. It's a 3-hour drive.
Oh yeah.
And to me, I mean, I'm obviously I have to be there. But I'm 5 hours away. I'm driving. But I mean, the Knoxville show to me is a really good one because there's a lot of. I mean, the Sound Team 6 guys are there. You're guaranteed to have some of the top vehicles in the country there just because they come from there. Mike Myers just won the overall SQ award at the show this past weekend, which is in this case Emma, Mecca, and Iasca combined all the sound scores from all the judges. There was 10 judges, 8 different score sheets plus the install score sheets, and he won the overall best award for that. Also, a month before that at Aggieland, which is the other, again, these are two of the 3 biggest shows of the year for sound quality. And Aggieland last month, he had the best of show for Iasca and Mecca, which a lot of times, there's different material, little different things, different judges. For a car to unanimously win both organizations, and then in this case, all 3 overall, you're doing something right. And it's his shop, his and his brother Chris, that own the shop that we're going to be doing the show at. And they have a lot of other good cars that are already there, plus the cars that are coming in from out of town. So it's not, let me say it this way. If you go there, it's not a gamble. You're going to meet some of the nicest people in car audio and listen to some of the best systems in the country, period, bar none.
And what's the date? Somebody asked there what the date of that event is.
It is at the end of the month. It's June 30. A lot of the calendars right now still say June 29 and 30. It was going to be a 2-day event originally. It's now a 1-day event. Hopefully, Iasca and Mecca will have it fixed here in the next day or so, but it's only on June 30 at the shop.
RC Catrone asked if both of you were going to be at SVR this year.
I'll be at Steel Valley for sure. Ben is never anywhere.
Actually, Toby asked if we could go to SVR today. So
you might be going to SVR.
Yeah, doubtful.
I've been to every one, so yes, I'll be there.
Yeah,
Ben
will be there.
Yeah,
we'll see. I'm in that. Hey, I have young kids, and
I have 4 kids. Shut up.
Nothing more to say.
You got no excuses again. You got no excuses. You just don't try hard enough. That's all.
Well, see, that's the best thing about being by yourself. You can create the narrative however you want it to be. You know, it's kind of like when Derek broke the Savard excursion. He finally caught to it. We had wheel on, so you know the thing's over now.
That was never proven. Even Will couldn't prove that I broke it.
Real quick, truck guy in the chat just asked about tuner challenge.
Hi, Brad.
Who is that?
That's Brad Beckman.
Oh, gee. Well, why am I answering his questions? He can just message me. Anyway, we did do that in the UK last year. That was kind of our first crossover. And so we did that at the Silverstone racetrack. Yeah, we're changing it up a little bit. We were trying to have one this past weekend, but it was just, there was too much. I just didn't feel prepared for it. But we are going to do the tuner challenge. We were thinking of doing it in Knoxville when it was a 2-day event, but now it's a 1-day event. Maybe I doubt we can figure out something in a month. But anyway, yes, the tuner challenge is basically, the tuner challenge is taking either 1 or 2 identical vehicles, and then you're taking, it's kind of going into a NASCAR scenario where you're taking away the differences between the vehicles, and then you're just throwing people in the car for, like what we did in Europe. We used 1 vehicle. It was a basic, 3-way front stage with pillars, and we put 8 different sets of well-known people in the UK. They got 1 hour to tune the car from scratch. And then Jeff Smith did the judging, and I handled the settings and everything. So we were completely blind. We didn't know who tuned what. We just saw, there was a red, yellow, green, blue, whatever colors for the tune. And then Jeff went through and scored them all. And then we picked the winner, again, totally blind. We didn't know who tuned it, who did anything. It was just one car, boom, 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 listening to the different tunes and judging it. So it's pretty cool because it takes away this guy has those amps, or this guy has that speakers, or he has that car. It takes away all that. All you have is your abilities against the system. So we're working on developing that. It's just a matter of kind of fixing some of the kinks and making it a little more interesting and doing some more things with it, but it's going to be cool.
Dead air. Right. I think we have reached the end.
Yeah, Big D's going to get a pillow out here in a second and put it down on the desk.
Yeah. And I'm at my in-laws, and I'm probably keeping them up at this point.
Okay. All
right. Well,
let's get out of here.
Thanks again, guys, for hanging out with us.
Thanks.
Yes.
Y'all take care. Have a good night.
12-volt Vega out.
All right. Peace.